So that was like a real eye-opener for her. Like, when you really start digging into your own data and your students' data, you can start to identify what some of the causes are and what are some of the things you need to do for the students sitting in front of you.
So are the strategies that we've identified in the comprehensive plan that we've worked on previously, are these going to be used as an action plan within the district to try to boost our academics from the negative test scores we saw the last couple of months?
Yes. Yes.
Any other questions? We look forward to hearing continued reports as to how things are progressing and how they're going. So we can move with policy.
Okay. So the first policy for this evening that we have is 216.1, supplemental discipline records. The recommendation to this committee is to adopt the PSBA new language that is in the document, and then also to adopt new procedures for receiving information and records from schools into when students enroll into our district. So a lot of the language is the same as the LASD policy, it's just a new updated language. And so we would recommend going with the PSBA.
Any questions on that one?
No, that's all right, in PSBA, so we need to push through.
Okay, so we're good to go to this one forward.
Policy 222, there were actually no changes to this policy, except that when naming first became, I guess I want to say a thing, Jewel was the brand name that was out there. So in every school policy, everybody put the brand name of Jewel, but now it's everywhere, like so many different brands. So they just took the brand name out and put generic language in for any type of vaping products. So there's really, other than taking Jewel out and making a generic vaping product, there's no changes to that policy.
Is everyone okay with moving that forward?
Okay, the next policy then is 227, controlled substances and paraphernalia. The only section that was added that I would like to point out to this committee, bless you, is on page 3. And I point this out so that it is our recommendation to this committee that you would move this part forward. About halfway down the page, on page 3, right above the antibiotic steroid section, it says no student may be permitted to a program that seeks to identify and rehabilitate the potential abuser without the intelligent, voluntary, and aware consent of the student and parent guardian. We would ask that you select that, that we would always inform a parent or guardian without taking any action, before taking any action.
We in agreement to move this policy forward?
Yeah.
Okay, policy 236.1 is threat assessment. Throughout this policy, we did have to designate individuals or certain personnel who were responsible for it. And what we selected and what you see on there is in alignment with our LASD policy. And it is one of the options that they allow us to make. So I would recommend sticking with LASD's policy, but they are all indicated on here.
And this dovetails with.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to point out is that we made the appropriate selections for who was responsible based on what we currently do in our practice. I can't see that.
We changed the word.
Oh, we did. Thank you. Can you remind me what page that's on?
It's on page 4.
Yes.
Oh, yes, sorry. PSBA had the district shall annually provide mandatory training on the identification. We had in our policy make available informational material. So we would like to keep it as make available the informational materials regarding student behavior that may indicate a threat to the safety of the student and other students.
You probably changed that because of the liability when you say mandatory.
I don't know, I don't know that we changed it because of the liability of it. I think our reasoning was, so we provide information to our students in the beginning of the year assemblies. There's information in handbooks, and then our staff, we talk to our staff at faculty meetings. So I don't know if, you know, in here it says school employees and other individuals, school facilities, or the community. So if we can provide information, like we're not providing training to everybody who comes into our
That's kind of how it
facilities.
reads, so that's why we're
Yeah.
that's why you changed it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we are providing something that's adequate in making sure that our staff is trained and aware
Of,
of it.
of the threat, yes.
Mhm.
Dr. Naylor helps with that, Mr. Lorenz helps with that, building principals do it in faculty meetings. So our staff and students hear this in a variety of different ways.
Is there any mandatory training that you provide to staff?
On threat assessment,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but they come to faculty meetings and hear it in there.
A threat assessment team is required by the state, and we do have that in
Mhm.
Cage Trenches, as Dr. Brown stated.
Right.
This is an excellent opportunity to make sure that we're providing that for all who will be required.
Yeah, but it takes, what we're kind of saying is it takes it from hard now, because PSBA said shall annually provide mandatory training. We're saying that we shall annually make available informational materials. So do we want to say that we shall make available the informational materials and then the administration may provide additional training or mandatory training or something like?
But you have something mandated by the state anyway.
A threat assessment team is mandated by the state.
Right.
This is above.
This is above the
Oh.
threat, we do have a threat assessment team, they are fully trained. This is above that.
Okay.
This is just saying that first,
Well, make available like school resources or informational resources. Would that be all encompassing? Would that be better language?
For annually making informational materials for school staff on the identification and recognition of student behavior that may indicate a threat to safety of the student. Those are things that we do provide in our vector training system. So it should be a very simple thing to be able to provide for that potential identification of it. The difficulty is you're not always going to be right when you look to recognize something. So instead of providing a mandatory training, provide teachers with that opportunity to review and better understand
Yeah.
what causes them.
I was gonna say too, if you want to keep the mandatory training, that we could do that, because then all we would do then is when those trainings happen in the faculty meetings with Dr. Naylor and Mr. Lorenz and the building principals, we would just have them sign into the meeting, and then that way we have a record that they received it, and then if they missed that faculty meeting, then they would have to do a follow-up one-on-one to get that training. There's other faculty meetings that we hold that have mandatory trainings in, and we do a sign-in to be able to record keep who attends those. So if you want to keep the mandatory language, we can certainly do that, and then we'll develop procedures for record keeping.
I I think that I don't want to tie the administration's hands, but I also think that it's a very important thing for staff to be aware of, so that any potential threat is identified and handled accordingly. And I don't want it just to be like something that's done at an in-service day that 25% of the staff might not show up to, and then they don't get the training that's necessary. And I'm not saying that 25% of staff don't show up to in-service days. I'm just saying that it being done in a non-mandatory fashion, that some staff may miss it.
Right.
So I just,
If this is in place-
everybody's getting it?
If this is in place, then we need to make sure that everyone gets it, and we need to make
So,
sure.
because faculty meetings are generally like before school or after school, so if you're sick today and you're a teacher, and that's the day we're holding the training, then you need it mandatory, which I'm fine doing. We just have to do a record keeping so that the next day, when you come back to school, the principal or Dr. Neal or me knows to pull you to give you the training.
I think from a threat assessment evaluation, it's good to know who took it, who didn't, and have a record of that. Then your efficiency would be.
Yeah, we have systems to be able to report that.
Yeah, we do, yeah. Again, we do it for other mandatory training, so if that's the board's way, that's fine, we can move that forward. If that's what the committee wants.
What's the reason that you decided, or that it was recommended to change the language?
I think because now, even though we do the training in our faculty meetings, we still, when people come in, if they come, like, they're not sure, we provide them resources, materials. We talk that through the threat assessment process with them, share with them the safe to say. I guess it's just more formalizes what we already do, so, which is still okay.
How about we make it a compromise statement? Let's take the word mandatory out and say, make available informational materials for school staff and provide training on, or something like that.
Provide informational materials and
And
provide
training.
training. Okay.
That works.
And I will still work with voting admin to do sign-in sheets, that way they know.
So is everybody good with moving that forward with the change?
Yes.
Okay, policy 247, hazing. Our recommendation would be to adopt PSBA new language throughout. They've added terms like serious bodily injury, student activity or organization. So really just some language changes. They added one new statement, when a student's behavior indicates a threat to the safety of the student, other students, school employees, school facilities, community, or others, district staff shall report the student to the threat assessment team in accordance with applicable laws and board policy. So they added that, but I will tell you that's already part of our practice. We made the appropriate selections underneath the different delegations of responsibility. And also, Carrie, can you go to page 5, please? So this policy does allow for fines, and in our LASD policy, we had fines, but we did not have any dollar amounts designated. So we selected $50 for at the building level or district office level to fine, and then the board, if it would come before you under an expulsion or an additional disciplinary consequence, you could then impose another $150 fine. The previous policy did not allot for any different amount, it just said you could fine. But when this came out from PSBA, they asked you to actually designate the amount. So this would be our recommendation, but it's certainly up to this committee if they want to change the dollar amounts.
Well, when you just say fines, it's arbitrary. Here, you're putting a number to it so that it's kind of more steadfast to enforce.
Any thoughts on the fine amounts?
Thinking maybe higher. $50 really isn't that much anymore. You really want to curb, I know it doesn't happen, but.
Because I think hazing is like
keep
one
it
of the
from-
most serious offenses.
Yeah, I
in
think it
the-
should be higher.
You can make the fine whatever you would like it to be. This policy simply authorizes the principal to be able to do that. It doesn't require them to do it. And it provides for the board may impose a fine up to. So it still provides that wiggle room if.
So your dollar
certain
amount
things are
Well-
could be exceeded?
Yeah, so you could, if you have
But
a
it's
higher
approved.
amount, it just doesn't mean that it will automatically be, you
Well, we would
change
have
it
to
from may
uncheck
to
that.
will.
Yeah.
It would, you will get fined, like not may be fined, you will be fined.
I mean, if the offense fits the criteria of the policy, then if it fits there, then it should be enforced.
I think that it gives, I think that it's good to give flexibility, because each scenario may be different.
Correct.
So we would want the principals and the board to have flexibility depending on the severity of the situation. But I agree.
I
think
might
that
be
if we-
reading it different than you.
Because it's,
Help me out, because when I read this, it sounds to me that we have to set the amount,
we can
whether.
set the amount, we can set the top.
Set the
because it's
top.
fine up to.
Okay,
And it's that we may fine them.
You could fine
up
them
to.
less,
So
okay.
we could fine them less than that,
Okay.
or not fine them at all, depending.
so let's take the first one then, for the building principal shall have the authority. If we don't want to do 50, what is a dollar amount that you would like to be able to go up to?
Did the solicitor give any indication, or I guess this is just only come from PSBA, did they say that there's like anything that we can't go up to? So.
Is there any other districts around that, if this is a kind of Commonwealth-wide?
I'm not aware of any other districts that offer fines.
And again, like Nick said, I mean, clearly no district wants it to happen, but
No.
I'm only aware of really only 2 really big cases in PA in the last few years. And I don't know that they had fines attributed to theirs. I don't want to say either way, but I don't know that they did.
So what if we, because I hate to liken it to this because it's much more serious than this, but I'm kind of thinking in the mindset of of a speeding ticket type thing or something like that. Like, what if the building principal could go up to like $200 and the board could go up to like $500?
I was thinking 250, 500.
You know, so either one of those.
And it can escalate up, so it's not like, wham, you can hit.
Right.
It's not necessary,
That allows for pressure discipline.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also still, excuse me, the criteria to be able to say, here's published.
And yeah,
250, 500 sounds reasonable, I think.
is that what the committee would like? Okay.
As long as we can show it's escalating up if needed.
I mean, and I mean, when you think about what this different because it says the board can set the additional fine. Said, if you do a superintendent, like a waiver
Right.
with them,
Right.
you, can part of that settlement be an
Sure.
additional fine?